Hello and welcome to The Atheist. A few years ago, I found myself in Fremantle, a suburb of Perth, Australia, visiting a friend. On one evening, he invited one of his friends over to hang out for a few hours. At one point in the conversation, my fellow guest was describing an encounter he'd had with someone who possessed telekinetic powers. Now, I'd long learned not to reflexively challenge everything I found dubious, but he apparently sensed my incredulity nonetheless, and perhaps feeling slightly defensive, the man made the claim that, quote, science is just as dogmatic as religion. The conversation remains memorable for just that remark. I remember disagreeing strongly with the statement, but at the time I hadn't yet formed a clear understanding of what exactly grounded scientific knowledge. As is common in life, the perfect response to that situation came to me long after the interaction had passed. The irony is that after all this time, I've come to the understanding that there are indeed unchanging core principles of reason that underlie all scientific knowledge. But for one, they are not, quote, dogmatic, as in they are not laid out by an authority as incontrovertibly true. And secondly, those core principles are not the scientific theories themselves, as some opponents of reason argue. In the same way there are core principles which make one Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, etc., there are also core principles of reason that underlie the rational worldview, and now I've come to clearly define those principles. In an earlier video, the Atheist mentioned that the full disclosure of truth was among its main objectives, and in the last video, it established some bedrock terms that frame how reality is invariably conceptualized, communicated, and portrayed by conscious beings. With these fundamental terms defined, this video will further clarify what it means by, quote, truth. It will define the difference between explanatory belief and evaluative belief, and it will introduce the heart of this channel, the core principles of reason that provide the foundation for all knowledge and the means to progress beyond universal doubt. Truth can be given as any and every quality of any and everything in nature. Truth entails everything that remains constant and everything that changes between each and every moment. Truth encompasses the totality of everything that exists, as it is, was, and will become. And truth comprises every action that physical entities do and have done to them. Truth represents all the qualities of nature as a thing in itself. Truth is the nature of nature. As such, it belongs to the domain of external reality, distinct from any knowledge of it. Knowledge, on the other hand, belongs to the domain of internal reality. Knowledge is a facet of consciousness. It is a type of belief. Beliefs are comprised of ideas, and ideas are rendered by thought. Like any other category of belief, knowledge is ultimately a collection of impressions created in consciousness to represent the phenomena of nature. Specifically, knowledge is given as any and all explanatory beliefs which have been verified by some degree of reasoning. A, quote, fact, then, is given as a particular instance of knowledge. And because truth and knowledge are distinct things, when a fact, belief, or idea is in accordance with truth, it is regarded as being, quote, true. This all gives a clearer meaning to the phrase, the full disclosure of truth. Essentially, the goal is to substantiate and deliver all knowledge of truth. To this end, the Atheist will convey everything believed about nature which has been verified by reason. Admittedly, the aforementioned definition of knowledge has begged the question, what exactly is an explanatory belief? Explanatory beliefs are given as beliefs which pertain to the intrinsic qualities of a thing. They are contrasted with evaluative beliefs, which are given as beliefs which pertain to internal assessments of a thing. Essentially, explanatory beliefs comprise an individual's objective understanding, and evaluative beliefs comprise an individual's subjective understanding. While knowledge is a primary example of an explanatory belief, not all such beliefs are necessarily verified. Many are casual inferences, simple guesses, estimations, or assumptions. In any case, explanatory beliefs have the qualities of being true or false, correct or incorrect, accurate or inaccurate. Oppositely, evaluative beliefs include opinions, judgments, and appraisals. They are formed based on how a thing makes one feel. Most notably, evaluative beliefs render individuals' moral and ethical disposition. They underlie what is deemed as good or bad, right or wrong. For practically every quality of everything in nature, there can be a corresponding explanatory and evaluative belief. Taking the quality of size, for example, an explanatory belief would hold that a thing measures a certain number of meters, whereas an evaluative belief would hold that that thing is large or small. Taking the quality of weight, the amount of kilograms something weighs, is explanatory. Deeming that thing as heavy or light is evaluative. Likewise for age, there's the descriptive quantity of days that a thing has existed for, and there's the judgment of a thing as being old or young. For volume, a noise can have a certain number of decibels, and it can be judged as loud or quiet. A light can have a certain number of lumens, and it can be judged as bright or dim. And an object's temperature can be understood in degrees or as hot or cold. Differing evaluative beliefs can coincide without contradiction. Using again the example of size, someone can believe something is large while another believes it is small, without either person being incorrect. This is a consequence of the subjectivity of consciousness. Differing explanatory beliefs, on the other hand, imply some error in either or both of those conceptions. This is a concept of the objectivity of nature. Sometimes the dispute is not a big deal and the parties can simply agree to disagree. But when the situation demands agreement, further inquiry is needed to reconcile conflicting explanatory beliefs. Understanding the difference between explanatory and evaluative beliefs is important because moving beyond universal doubt requires finding a way to substantiate knowledge, and it is pointlessly circular to ground explanatory beliefs in other explanatory beliefs. Doing so creates the problem of infinite regress. Regarding any such belief, one might ask themselves, why do I believe that? And for every explanation they wind up at the same question again and again and again. Evaluative beliefs are not plagued with that issue. While there might be some prior experience which explains why someone feels a certain way about something, ultimately, how someone feels is fundamental to who they are as a feeling being. Therefore, to avoid the problem of infinite regress, the elitist will ground all explanatory belief in a formal system of evaluative beliefs. That is, this channel will lay out 5 first principles which together codify reason itself. The principles of reason outline 5 ethical positions which will serve as the epistemological framework that grounds, validates, or quote, justifies all knowledge. The principles of reason are ethical entities, i.e., they are statements that prescribe how ought. As such, they are distinct from claims about truth, which describe what is. Like all ethical statements, they are neither true nor false. Instead, they are right or wrong by choice, either adopted or not based on internal predilection. The principles of reason are offered as a set of core beliefs. As such, they find no deeper justification. These axiomatic principles collectively solve the problem of infinite regress by providing the final answer to the question, why believe, with respect to any established fact. Essentially, the elitist takes the next step out of universal doubt by establishing a conscious orientation towards knowledge itself. It proceeds by outlining a, quote, conscience of reason. Conscience is given as an emotional disposition towards, or rational association with, a particular entity that reflects an ingrained value system. The entity in question here is knowledge. The emotional disposition towards it is one of great interest and concern, and the ingrained value system so reflected is one characterized by honesty, humility, conviction, adaptability, and curiosity. The aletheist therefore categorizes reason as a form of conscience regarding knowledge, truth, and the relationship between the two, and the principles of reason represent a code of ethics for ensuring the trueness of knowledge. Unanimous acceptance of any ethic among all conscious beings is a brittle ideal. It shatters in light of all the possible ways that an individual might feel about nature, their own mind, and the relationship between the two. But in the sincere effort of mutual understanding, and to coalesce as many minds as possible around a common worldview, the principles of reason are drafted to be self-evident, all-inclusive, and exceptionally robust. In preceding the establishment of knowledge, these principles are not based on any. They are meant to lay the groundwork for how knowledge ought to be vetted, and are thus formed without prior assumptions about nature. They arise from a position of universal doubt and presume only the conscious qualities of a feeling, thinking being. The next 5 videos will be dedicated to elucidating each of the principles of reason, but in short, the 0th principle starts out with the most basic proposition of all. Conscious beings don't want to hold false beliefs. It prescribes that knowledge and truth ought to correspond. The first principle acknowledges the potential for error, i.e., the possibility of forming false beliefs. It prescribes that knowledge ought not to be grounded in consciousness. The second principle ensures the trueness of belief by valuing the role of, quote, evidence, i.e., objective measurement. It prescribes that knowledge ought to be grounded in nature. The third principle reconciles the difficulties and limitations of acquiring and interpreting evidence. It resolves the problem of incomplete information by denouncing absolute certainty, and it prescribes that knowledge ought to explain the most evidence and therefore be revised in light of new evidence. And the fourth and final principle recognizes that gleaning knowledge is an unending process of reducing error. It prescribes that knowledge ought to be perpetually deepened with continued inquiry. It is worth repeating that these principles reflect the ingrained value system of honesty, humility, conviction, adaptability, and curiosity, respectively. The aletheist will employ the principles of reason to establish all knowledge of nature. Every fact that this channel claims to be true will be grounded in them. All claims will be offered with the sincere intention to accurately depict nature. None will be the sole product of internal inspiration. Every assertion will be qualified by evidence. They will all be subject to revision given any new collected corpus of evidence, and every fact the aletheist will establish represents the culmination of lines of inquiry having been followed for centuries by those with exceptional devotion to reason. Although I drafted these principles myself, I trust that those who believe in the rational worldview will easily appreciate what they convey: the drive to understand nature, skepticism of ideas, valuing evidence, revising theories in light of new evidence, and the important role of curiosity. Additionally, these principles are useful in a personal sense. Understanding the world as it is better equips you to function in it. Challenging your own assumptions enables self-improvement in countless arenas of life. Challenging other people's assumptions, namely those who would seek to influence you, makes you less vulnerable to manipulation, and anchoring your beliefs in evidence makes you less gullible. Being able to admit uncertainty makes you less arrogant. Being able to adapt to new information makes you more fair. And cultivating a sense of curiosity opens you up to learning and growing as a person. Furthermore, some of these principles are even implicitly utilized by societal institutions. Schools and universities' primary directive is to teach true knowledge. The justice system couldn't function without prizing evidence as a means to discern truth. And societies that apply new information to craft public policy, and those that invest in research, are better prepared to meet the challenges they face and improve the lives of their citizens. Finally, and most significantly, there is a well-established intellectual tradition dating back centuries, even millennia, wherein individuals from all over the world have applied these principles to collectively amass an unprecedented body of knowledge. That tradition is called natural philosophy, but in recent centuries, it has come to be known as, quote, science. Thank you for listening. Please like the video if you agree with the ideas presented in it. Subscribe to the channel if you believe in the rational worldview and its potential. And comment if you have questions, suggestions, compliments, or critiques about the content.